And we're getting word right now of something federal agents in Southern California say they have been chasing underground quite literally for months. If you followed the news out of the U.S. Mexico border at all over the past decade, you know the story it usually tells: wrecker migration, political fights, cartel violence spilling across a line drawn in the sand. That's the border most people picture. But the fight that came to a head this spring wasn't happening at the fence or the checkpoint. It was happening 70 feet beneath them, in the dark, where a crew of smugglers believed no camera, no agent, and no drone could ever follow. They were wrong. Here is what investigators confirmed. In early April, agents assigned to the San Diego Sector Border Patrol tunnel team located a cross-border smuggling tunnel that was still actively under construction. The passage ran from Tijuana, Mexico, and pushed more than 1,000 feet into United States soil, surfacing near a commercial warehouse close to the Otay Mesa port of entry. Mapped end to end, it measured 2,918 feet, well over half a mile of hand-dug earth. And this was no crude burrow. Inside, agents documented electrical wiring, lighting strung along the walls, a ventilation system pumping fresh air to the diggers, and a rail track laid down the length of the shaft, built to move heavy loads quickly and quietly under the feet of every commuter crossing above. Think about what that means. From 2 border crossings, to the shelves of American pharmacies and street corners, to the warehouses and logistics yards where product gets split and moved. All of it, in this case, was meant to flow through a tube barely 42 inches tall and 28 inches wide. A grown adult couldn't stand up in it. Smugglers were expected to crawl or lie flat on a cart and drag millions of dollars in narcotics through the dirt, breathing pumped air, one load at a time. And the smugglers behind it made a fatal assumption. The same assumption that has undone crew after crew along this border. They assumed that because no one could see them, no one knew. To understand why they were caught, you have to understand what they were up against. The Otay Mesa area of San Diego is not random ground. It sits on soft, dense clay that is paradoxically ideal for digging, which is exactly why the cartels keep coming back to it, and exactly why U.S. authorities have concentrated their most specialized tunnel hunting resources there. Since 1993, more than 95 cross-border tunnels have been discovered and shut down in the San Diego region alone. 95, each one dug in secret, each one meant to be the exception, and each one eventually found. The agents who find them belong to a task force that treats a tunnel less like a hole and more like a crime scene stretched across 2 countries. They watch warehouses that lease quickly and stay strangely empty. They track shell companies that rent industrial space and never seem to do business. They coordinate with Mexican law enforcement to find the entrance on the other side, and they use ground-penetrating tools and old-fashioned surveillance to pin down the exit before a single kilo ever moves. The tunnel is the hardest part of the operation to build, and it turns out the hardest part to hide once someone starts watching the building on top of it. Which brings us to the case that shows exactly how these crews fall. If you're finding this story as gripping as we are, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Not far from that April discovery, in the same stretch of Otay Mesa, investigators had spent months quietly watching the storefront. On paper, it was a discount shop called Buy 4 Less. In reality, it sold almost nothing. Agents grew suspicious of the constant activity around a store with empty shelves and no real customers, and they kept watching. What they eventually uncovered beneath that fake store was another sophisticated tunnel, roughly 1,930 feet long, some 55 feet deep, with reinforced walls, its own rail and ventilation systems, and electricity running the length of it. The passage ran from Tijuana straight up into the back of the phony shop, turning an ordinary-looking retail unit into the mouth of a smuggling pipeline. And this is where the smugglers' confidence became their downfall. Because agents weren't just watching the store, they were watching the vehicles coming and going. When they moved in, officials say they pulled over 3 vehicles and recovered more than 2,200 pounds of cocaine between them. In total, more than a ton of cocaine was tied to the operation, a haul valued at over $45 million. For people were charged in connection with the tunnel and the trafficking. Prosecutors identified the men as Gregorio Epifanio Hernandez Lopez and Jose Jimenez, both of San Diego, along with Brandon Escalante Sandoval and Antonio Cortez, both of Mexico. Investigators say the passage is believed to have been operated on behalf of one of Mexico's most powerful criminal organizations, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Notice what actually brought the whole thing down. It wasn't the tunnel failing. The engineering worked. It was the surface, the empty store, the suspicious traffic, the cars leaving heavy. Every tunnel needs a building on the American side to swallow the product. And that building is the one thing the smugglers can't bury. It sits in daylight in a street, on a lease with a sign out front. And sooner or later, someone is watching it. None of this is new. It only feels new. To see how deep this pattern runs, rewind more than 30 years to a small warehouse in Douglas, Arizona. Back in 1989, a rising Sinaloa trafficker most of the world had never heard of, a man named Joaquin Guzman, who would later be known simply as El Chapo, is credited with commissioning what many consider the first truly sophisticated cross-border tunnel. It stretched roughly 300 feet from a house in Agua Prieta, Mexico, into that Arizona warehouse. It had lighting, a rail system, and ventilation, ideas that every crew after him would copy and scale up. And the entrance was almost theatrical. On the Mexican side, the shaft was hidden beneath a concrete slab topped by a pool table. A slab lifted by a hidden hydraulic system that was triggered, of all things, by turning a water spigot outside the house. For a while, it worked brilliantly. But in the spring of 1990, the story goes, someone left the hydraulic floor raised and the pool table tilted in the open, a careless mistake that caught the eye of a passing officer. The investigation that followed unearthed the tunnel and helped expose an operation that had been moving staggering quantities of cocaine north. The most advanced tunnel of its era was undone not by technology, but by a single moment of carelessness on the surface. More than 3 decades later, the fake Buy 4 Less store and the empty warehouse tell the exact same lesson. So, if the smugglers keep getting caught, why do they keep digging? Because from the cartel's cold arithmetic, the tunnel still pays. A single completed passage can move loads worth tens of millions of dollars before it's ever found. Even the longest, most elaborate tunnel ever discovered on the southwest border, a 4,309-foot monster running from a Tijuana industrial building, roughly 5.5 feet tall, 70 feet deep, fitted with a rail cart system, forced air ventilation, high-voltage electrical panels, an elevator at the entrance, and a full drainage system. Represented an investment the organization was willing to make because the payoff, if it went undetected, was enormous. They are betting that the tunnel gets used enough times before it gets found to justify the fortune it costs to build. And that is the quiet war being fought under this border. On one side, crews with money, engineers, and patience willing to spend a year in the dirt for a passage that might survive only a handful of runs. On the other, a task force that has learned it doesn't need to be underground to win. It needs to watch the empty stores, the quiet warehouses, the leases that don't add up, and the vehicles that leave a little too heavy. The tunnel found this April was never finished. Its diggers were still crawling toward their exit, still stringing lights, still laying track, still certain that the surface above them had no idea they were there when the people on that surface walked in and shut it down. The Buy 4 Less crew thought a discount store nobody shopped at was the perfect disguise, right up until the moment the handcuffs came out. And more than 30 years ago, the most sophisticated tunnel in North America was betrayed by a tilted pool table. 95 tunnels, and counting, in San Diego alone. Every one of them was supposed to be the one that got away. Every one of them ended the same way, with agents standing at an exit the smugglers were sure would never be found, looking down into the dark, waiting for whoever came crawling through